Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Melissa Toole, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about this book that you wrote about time that I think is fascinating. Thanks for joining.
Sure.
It's great.
Thank you so much for having me.
So where were you born?
So I was born in Manhattan, actually, in New York City. A very strange story, actually. I was born there because both of my parents were soap opera actors.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, my father played Dr. Seneca Bolak on Ryan's Hope for many years. And my mother played Edna Thornton on All My Children for many years.
Wow.
So I was
cool.
Born there because that's where their studios were.
Sure.
That's where they worked.
That's where they worked, yeah.
Yes. And so my sister and I actually both always planned to go into acting because we didn't know anything else.
Right.
I mean, that's what our parents did. So my sister actually was Nadia on Lost. And she was also in the Twilight series, the movie. She played the Egyptian vampire in the Egyptian Coven.
Wow.
And she was most recently on Perry Mason, where she played Constance. Anyway, so she did that. But that's kind of ahead of the story.
Okay.
I grew up, always wanting to act. I ended up going to Tulane University in New Orleans, which I loved. But after graduation, I really didn't have anywhere else to go except back home again. So I went back to my parents' apartment on 57th Street. And I went on auditions and looking for whatever gig I could get. And I actually did end up getting a job as a co-host of a show on MTV called Oddville MTV, where they did, the people on the show did odd or unusual things, really weird talents that they had. And I was sort of the sidekick, the Ed McMahon, if you will. I would watch them and interview them. And it was a great show. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But then I got married. Then I had two boys, beautiful, beautiful boys, Michael Ryan and Brendan. And then we moved to the suburbs. We moved to Westchester. And I put all the acting stuff sort of on the back burner to be a mom. And I fully embraced that and had the best time raising them. Read to them every night religiously up until Mikey was in 7th grade. Just me in the middle of the bed, two of them on either side, and just reading to them every night. I really wanted them to develop a passion and a love for books.
Oh, sure.
Then they got bigger and I went to school, went to work at a preschool where I currently am. I'm a preschool teacher here in Westchester. I teach 4-year-olds. And so that's basically it. Mikey is now a freshman at University of Richmond. And Brendan is a junior in high school.
Wow. So do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions?
Of course.
So growing up in Manhattan, who was the most influential person to you?
My dad. My dad was most amazing, like fantastic person you've ever met. I mean, he was the quintessential gentleman. He was lovely to everybody. He totally supported my sister and me. He was the biggest cheerleader for us. And he just influenced me in every way. He always told me to write, actually. He told me just always write, because he knew that I had it in me to be a writer. And he knew that ever since I was like 9, I was writing little stories. I was a horrible speller. And, and they're hard to decipher now, but I was writing even then. And he really promoted that, and he really believed in me. But then again, if I had said, I want to be an astronaut, he would have found a way to get me to the moon. I mean, he was that supportive of us.
That's awesome. So growing up in Manhattan, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I would say just you didn't even need to travel anywhere, because there were so many different kinds of people from all over the world that were living there. Just in my class, in my elementary school, people from Africa, people from England, people from all over the world. There were just so many different kinds of people. And they would bring their lunches to school, and all of their lunches, they smelled differently and they looked different, but I loved it because I always wanted to travel and I always wanted to see new places. And I did that when I got older. But from a young age, I could appreciate that the world was big and how many different kinds of people and different traditions and different cultures. And I think that's very unique to Manhattan. I don't think a lot of other places are like that. At least it's not like that in Westchester.
Gotcha.
Where I am.
So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
In high school, I loved history.
Yeah.
I loved history, which is sort of, I mean, I've had a fascination with time for a while, but I could just watch video from the early 1900s. They have it colorized now. Just watching people walking down the street, going about their day, going about their errands. I could watch that for hours because it fascinates me how people lived back years and years and years ago. And it's all the same stuff. People had the same arguments. People had the same passions. People had the same disagreements. People had the same vacations. I mean, people have always been the same. And that really has always fascinated me. So I had a history teacher named Marion Truslow in high school. And he was amazing because he made history not about dates or battles, but about stories and the way people lived. And he was amazing. He made me become a history major actually at Tulane.
Really? Yeah. So you graduate from high school and you decide to go to Tulane, which is in New Orleans, Louisiana, right?
Yes. Yep.
Quite a ways from Manhattan.
Yes.
What made you pick Tulane?
Because it's going to sound funny, but I was actually quite sheltered growing up in New York City because it's all I really knew. And I assumed the whole world was sort of like Manhattan or similar to that. And I thought, I need to bust out and I need to try something totally different. I need to just see a totally different place and a totally different culture, and where I don't even know anybody, and just experiencing it, new. And that's what happened. I went to Tulane and I was struck right away by how much kind of like slower everybody moved. Everything was just a little bit slower. And at first I was like, oh, this is driving me crazy. It needs to be fast. But then I got right into it, and I fell in line with sort of a more mellow vibe, and fell in love with the music, fell in love with the food, fell in love with the school. It was the best decision going there. I absolutely loved it, and I was very disappointed it was only 4 years.
So that was quite a culture shock.
Yeah, it was. It was a culture shock. This one kid called me Yankee on the first day, and I said, I don't even like baseball. What do you mean? I
Right.
didn't get that he was actually I didn't get it, but yeah, it was great.
So moving there and moving in, did you stay in a dorm in your freshman year?
I did. I stayed at Sharp Hall, and I was assigned a random roommate that I had never met named Liz, and we're still great friends to this day. I just saw her a couple weeks ago because she was in the city for business, so we met up for dinner,
Yeah.
and she was amazing. She was from Evanston, Illinois, and we just, even though we didn't have some things in common, like she was a swimmer and I still did the doggy paddle. Um, but we really connected. We both loved chocolate chip cookies. So when she first met me, she brought me chocolate chip cookies. And I thought, oh, you are a friend for life.
Yeah. Yeah. Won you over, huh?
She really did. And she's just fun. And I can't believe that they just set us up randomly.
Yeah.
And that it worked out so well. We ended up actually doing a semester abroad in Florence
Oh,
together as well.
cool. There you go. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what was the single biggest adjustment you had to make going from Manhattan to New Orleans and going to school?
I think it probably would have been the same anywhere. The independence was new.
Mhm.
For the first time in my life, I didn't have a curfew. So that was different.
Yeah.
I was always really the only one of all my friends who had a curfew in high school. Nobody else did, but of course I had to be home at midnight because my parents were, I think, well, they were nervous about a young girl out in the city alone at night. They're both from California.
Oh, yeah.
So they both went to UCLA and they're California people. So I think that's why they were a little bit more overprotective of
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. New York must have been a culture shock for them too.
It was. It was. So I think just the independence in college was new. Going home when I wanted to go home and choosing what I wanted to eat and when I wanted to eat. I think it would have been the same anywhere I went. But going to New Orleans specifically, I just was fascinated and just in love with all the different kinds of people I met. I mean,
Mhm.
I had never met somebody from Biloxi,
Mhm.
and I had never met anyone from Illinois, my
Right.
roommate. But
Mhm.
I mean, it was so cool because Tulane had people from all over the country and the world there, and that
Yeah.
was I just loved that.
So you choose to be a history major.
Yeah.
Why do you choose that?
Well, it actually happened that I began as a theater major
Mhm.
because I thought
Acting,
I
yeah.
want to be an actress.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm going to be an actress, so I'll be a theater major. But the teacher for the freshman theater class was a little bit discouraging.
Hmm.
He said, very few people actually make it in the acting business, which I know to be true.
Mhm.
It's so hard to get a gig as an actor, but he said it, and I was very disappointed by that because
Yeah.
it's not what you want to hear kind of right off the bat.
Right.
Um, and then the people in the theater department seem to be very into certain things like going to poetry readings on Friday night, let's say. And they thought that it was very strange that I had chosen to join a sorority. And they didn't really accept that. They thought that that was, you know, not a good idea. And they were, so I thought maybe these aren't really my people here.
Yeah.
I can always study acting after I graduate. And for now, I can study what I love, what I've loved since high school,
Right.
history.
Yeah.
So I was a history major and an English minor. And as soon as I graduated and I moved back home, that's when I started taking acting in the city, and it was much better.
So after you graduate from college and you move
Mhm.
back to Manhattan, you start taking acting classes. Did you at some point decide that acting wasn't for you? What happened?
No, I always was auditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I probably shouldn't have been auditioning as much as I was because I didn't really know what I was doing yet. And I don't think I was all that talented at the time,
Yeah.
but I was getting a lot of auditions. And I never decided that it was something I didn't want to do. I
Yeah.
always was, trying to do more. And my side gig, instead of waiting tables, I was teaching at a school part-time so that I could have a job while also going on auditions. But it was always, and I had some a job in a play that I did, and I got a role on a soap where I actually had to give birth on the soap. And I had no idea I was supposed to walk like a pregnant person,
Mm-hmm.
and the director was trying to tell me how to walk, and I was walking the wrong way. I couldn't figure it out. And then, yeah, it was, I don't think I was very good in that episode, but yeah, it was always something I wanted to do. It was really only after I had kids that I sort of stopped pursuing that.
Yeah.
I
And
got
the
into
idea,
the
the idea behind stopping to pursue it is you wanted to be there for the children.
Yeah, I thought if something absolutely out of this world crazy should happen and I should actually get a movie or I should actually get a series, well, then I'll never see them.
Yeah.
And I was always involved in every little aspect of their lives. I knew all their friends. Their friends have always come over to the house, and I knew the ins and outs of their lives and what they wanted for snack and what their interests were, what they didn't like so much. And I just didn't want to pull myself away from that, even though the odds of actually booking something like that were very slim.
Mm-hmm.
Now auditioning would have required a commute into the city because I was now no longer in the city. So I said, I'll come back to that at another time and just focus on this right now.
So moving, at some point you moved to Bedford.
Right.
And moving to Bedford is really a quality of life thing because, like you said before we hit record, you were telling me that the boys were climbing the walls and they needed a yard. They needed someplace where they could go outside and play and do their thing and grow up.
Yeah, they really did need that. They really did. I mean, they were making so much noise, running all around in that apartment that the downstairs neighbor threatened to sue us because of all the noise. And I would take them to the playground, but that wasn't really enough. They couldn't go out on their own and just play out there. I had to take them there. And at some point we did have to come home back into the tiny little apartment.
Right.
So it became necessary to leave. And as I said to you before the interview, they still thank us for taking them out of the city because they just are so happy just going out into the woods whenever they want and having that freedom to ride bikes and do all those things that they couldn't do in the city.
Like the energy that you want to be able to bottle, right? It's just,
yeah.
they just go, and it's, and at a playground, you get some of that energy burned up, but you don't get all of it, and it's like, so it's tough. So
it's true.
Yeah. So you moved to Bedford, and at some point so when you moved to Bedford, is that when you go into teaching?
Not yet. No, because they were still little then.
Okay.
And so I was still a stay-at-home mom at that point. When Brendan was in 5th grade, that's when I decided to get some sort of job. And that's when I went into the schools. And I got a job at the preschool where I work now. And what's great about it is that they never grow up. They're always 4 years old. Every year they're 4 years old. And so I never have to move past that age, which I miss so much.
It's hard. It's hard, man.
Yes.
And then you see other people's kids, right? Like I have a client right now, or a couple right now that are clients of mine, and and they have a little boy that's less than 2, and his name's Dakota. And the very first time that I went over to their house to meet him and to tour their house and that kind of thing, I sold their house for him. He nicknamed me Papa Mike. So I'm Papa Mike, right?
Yeah.
And now he calls his dad Daddy Mike.
Oh,
Mike's, right? And it's one of
yeah,
the cutest things ever. It's like you really miss, I mean, it's real. You miss when they were that age.
you
You
really
know,
do.
it's just they're the cutest they've ever been, I think.
I agree.
You know, they're adorable now too, but
I
right.
agree.
So you decide to go into to teach preschool, and you teach 4-year-olds, which is really cool. At some point, you make a decision to write a book. Talk about that for a second. I mean, not everybody does that, right? And I know there are people that are listening to this that are wanting to write a book. Maybe they've been putting it off, whatever, right? And at some point you make the decision that you're going to do this. Talk about that, how that all came about.
Well, you're not going to believe this, but I had originally written the story in 1999.
Okay.
And the reason I wrote it in 1999, I was still living at home with my parents. And I thought, I can't believe it's going to be a whole new century.
Yeah.
What is up with this time going by so quickly? Now, I was not married. I did not have kids. And I was just freaking out that I didn't care about that technology. I wasn't worried that the world was going to end like with the technology, like people were.
I was the Y2K thing.
Yeah, it didn't scare me. What scared me was the passage of time. And I thought, I need to write about this because this is freaking me out.
Right.
So I wrote the story and I sent it out in the mail to so many literary agents and so many publishers. And they all said, no, 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 no. So many rejections. Of course, I'm used to rejection because I'm an actress.
Right.
So I was like, okay, that's how it goes. They don't want the story. Maybe it's not good. And I just left it. So last summer, I was working in the camp at the preschool. And I was like, I really want to revisit that story. I think I should try again. And so I found the story. I submitted it online this time because now you can submit it online to probably 10 children's book publishers.
Right.
And right away, a publishing house in London said yes.
Wow.
And I had to reread it like 3 times. I was in my car when I got the email and I thought, that can't be. They said yes. Yeah. They actually said, like, I was shocked. And so they published it. And I was thrilled because it had been a story that I had written so long ago. And I had pretty much given up on it until it struck me, this is relevant. And I thought it was relevant because kids had been coming up to me, and every year they do this around this time of year, the end of the school year, and they're nervous about kindergarten. They don't know what to expect. And it's going to be new friends. It's going to be new teacher. What is it going to be like? And they're scared and they're wishing that they could stay. They're wishing that time didn't move on. And I thought this is really relevant, and not just for adults, which is what I was when I wrote it without kids, but also really for kids. And so that's how it happened.
I remember being young, and I remember that feeling right at the end of the year, and sort of I don't know what you call it, I guess scared about the next step, about the next thing,
Yeah.
And my dad told me, he said, you need to get used to something. For the rest of your life, you're going to be starting over. For the rest of your life, you're going to be starting over. So you need to just embrace it. You need to just, enjoy it, right? Figure out a way to make it work and move forward. And that's probably one of the wisest things anybody's ever said to me, that you starting over is something that we just need to embrace. And as a child, it really does wear on you. You know, the whole
Yeah.
idea of you're now going to a new school, you're, you know, where all these new kids are and all that kind of thing. And, you know, we had just moved to where my elementary school was before I started going to school there. And it was like, it was all whole new neighborhood and whole new, you know, the whole deal. And yeah, it was an adjustment. So I remember that. I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
So you write the book. Tell us about the book itself. So what's it? It's about time, right? But give us a brief illustration of what the book's about altogether.
Mhm. A 9-year-old girl, no, sorry, 8-year-old girl named Emily wakes up in the body of an adult one morning, and she doesn't understand what it is that has caused this. Maybe it's an evil curse. She doesn't know. And then she figures out that it is time who is to blame, because he is the villain of all villains, and he's always changing everything too quickly. And so she decides that her mission is going to be to find time and stop him. And so she goes looking in the sky because time flies. She goes looking in the garbage dump because people waste time. She goes looking in the bank because time is money, to try to find him and say, hey, knock it off. You're moving too quickly. Look at me. I'm in the body of an adult. What's going on? It's your fault.
Right.
Anyway, I'm not going to give away whether she actually finds him or not.
You have to read the book.
Yes, you have to read the book, but the kids enjoy it. The ones I've read it to, because it is relatable.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's a question for you. Are there any more books in the offing?
Yes, actually. Funny you should ask. I teach a drama club at the preschool because, of course, I mean, I have to keep that.
Come on now.
Somewhere. And so
it's in the blood.
the highlight of the drama club every session is the gem hunt. I have these plastic sparkly gems that the kids love. And so every session when we're about to do the gem hunt, I tell a little story about how there's a kingdom called Bubble Up. Now, this is, my father used to tell this story about a fictitious kingdom named Bubble Up. And the two princesses who live in it are Flower and Rose, which of course I was Rose, my sister was Flower. And how they live in this castle, and pirates came one day, they stole the gems. So we have to go and find the gems. And so I hide the gems in the yard of the school, and the kids have to find the stolen gems.
Right.
And they love it. Well, they love it so much that this one little girl, Brooke, said to me, I want to hear the rest of that story. I want to hear more about the gems and the pirates and the kingdom and the princesses. I want to hear more. So I said, all right, Brooke, I will do that. So I went home and I flushed it out. I made more and more of the story. And so that's going to be my next book. And so
awesome.
I read more of it, and Brooke said, I love it. You know, give me more. So she's like an agent. So
when's that coming out?
I have to finish the book first, and then I have to get another publisher, or maybe the same publisher that said yes to this one, to agree to publish it.
Right.
So probably it'll be another year before all that happens.
Well, will you come back when it's time to release that one?
Yes, absolutely.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I've thoroughly enjoyed every second of this. It's been a lot of fun.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.